Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me and my very special guest. You know her from such shows as Fun Home, and she has just won the Outer Critics Circle and the Drama Desk for her sensational star turn as Jo in the Alanis Morissette musical Jagged Little Pill. Please say hello to Lauren Patten. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
What's it like watching that go by, like your whole beautiful company from Jagged Little Pill?
It actually made me kind of emotional. I wasn't expecting it to because I've seen that B-roll footage plenty of times now, but it made me kind of emotional. I miss our show. I do.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how are you and where are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm good. I'm in New York.
Okay.
So when the shutdown first happened and the pandemic was at its peak in New York, I was out of the city. I went to a rural town in Vermont and took a little break from the city and tried to make it feel a little bit more like maybe this is a vacation from the show and whatever. But I did go back home to Chicago and visit my family too, which was great. But I've been back now in the city for a little while and home in my apartment with my cat. Going through the days.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask you, what was March 12th like for you? I mean, because it was so sudden. I mean, people sort of knew there was something going on, but no one knew how long this was ever going to last. So what was March 12th like for you? How did you find out? And what was that night like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because we had just had a 2-show day on March 11th. It was a Wednesday. And I remember it was I mean, nobody had enough information to really be able to understand how serious things were. I mean, I look back at it now and I think, oh my God, we just did not get it. We just didn't get it. But of course, how could we? Because there wasn't enough information at that time. But I remember in the evening show, one of our crew guys, Charlie, in his office. I think he's our head carpenter, and he's got. He's got a great title, I believe.
Yeah.
He's got his office, and he has a big TV in his office that's usually playing something, movies or news or whatever, in the basement during the show. And I walked past to go make a cue, and I saw that the NBA was shutting down because that member from the Utah Jazz had tested positive, and that the NBA was canceling their season. And I remember just thinking, oh wait, that was one of the first things where it felt like, wow, wait a second, this is actually quite serious. But we finished the show, and I remember I went to the stage management's office and I made a joke. I was like, see you tomorrow, maybe. Not realizing that actually that's what it was going to be like. So I was in Midtown. My mother had actually come into town because I was going to play a concert at Rockwood that weekend with my band, which we of course ended up canceling. But she had come into town, super jealous. My mom is one of the very few people who got to see Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I'm so jealous of her. So she saw Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. She saw Company, and she was gonna come see Jagged, and she was gonna see. I know, right?
Mom
I
knew
did
something.
Get to see Company.
I
did get to see Company, but not Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and that I'm very jealous of. But yeah, I was having lunch with her, and it was all so sudden, and of course it was. It came out through the news first because it was a governmental decision, so. Yeah, all of a sudden, just our group cast chat started blowing up and saying, hey, it's on the news that Broadway is shut down. We literally had new understudies, new vacation swings, 2 new cast members to the show rehearsing in the theater when the news came out. So I was in Midtown, so I went to the theater and saw them and got some stuff from my dressing room because I thought, okay, we're shut. And to me at that time, a month felt so long. That felt huge. Because we just had no idea. It was starting to become clear that we would have to take a pause at some point.
Yeah.
But we just didn't know how long it would be. And so when the news came out that it was a month, I was like, whoa, that's a really long time. And of course now that feels like nothing.
Well, because, we just got the news this week that Broadway is shut down. I mean, I know they're refunding tickets through January 3rd or whatever, but nothing's coming back until the spring. This is March, April, June, July shows. It's going to be a year. How are you coping with that news this week?
I think that for the last few, I think that really, I kind of, more of the coping was coming with the first month of the
Yeah.
shutdown, and sort of as it started to become clear and sink in how serious this pandemic is, and just how much our life is going to be changed for a long time. So I think that while obviously I didn't know specific dates or anything,
Yeah.
not like anybody does. Ooh, that
Yeah.
thunderstorm. Did y'all hear that?
I have it right behind me. I'm like, here it comes.
The little summer shower. Anyway, that was just so dramatic.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that I s- uh, I'm more in acceptance now, or that's it's not
Yeah.
a shock to me anymore, even though I didn't know specific dates. I think I started to realize, oh, it's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
And letting go, I think I had to let go of, well, is it going to be this date or this date, or maybe it's going
Yeah.
to be trying to figure out when it's going to be, and just sort of understanding it's going to be a long time,
Yeah.
and just leaving it at that. And because yeah, because it's too hard to sit in this kind of waiting game. It's I've had to try to get myself to just be a little bit more in the present moment and say this is
Yeah.
what it is right now, you know, and try to be more present and accepting of the current situation. Um, yeah, yeah,
Well, you're such a close company. Like I told you before we went on live, I had the Healy family here,
yeah.
into the first month, and everybody was sort of like, I'm just trying to find our way. I mean, it was just at the beginning of all of this. But I know you're a
Hmm.
really close company. How often do you all StreamYard or get together or Zoom or
Yeah. Well, we have our producers and our management set up like a company happy hour once a week, and
Okay.
which is great because it's with anybody who can show up, and it's our whole crew,
Yeah.
designers, like just everybody in the entire family, which is really great. That makes me really happy. So we do have the shot to we have that kind of space every week to see each other if we're available, and we have our group text threads that are
Yeah.
always
Going on.
going. Oh yeah, and we're always in touch. Yeah, because we are close, and it is something that we've all sort of poured our hearts and souls into now for the majority of us for years. So it's uh yeah, just because the show isn't happening right now
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we're not going to be together. And also, what's been nice too is in the last like month or so, as life starts to open up a little bit more in New York, and also with all of the protests happening, and that being
Yeah.
something that um, the cast is very aligned in our views, I will say, and so that's something that we all really care about very deeply. So I've gotten to see some people, both in um, going out in the streets and taking action, but also just in the nature of being able to do a little bit more socially distanced things now, and
Yeah.
even just getting to see people's half of their faces is makes me very happy.
Sure. It's funny. Early on, it was like, oh, can I recognize someone just from their eyes or the top of their head? And now I can. Now I have like, oh, I can recognize everybody in a mask.
Our brains have adjusted,
Yeah.
truly.
It took like a week or so, but I was like, oh, now I've got this. This is the new now. Like, oh, that's Lauren. That's so and so. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, how are you? What has being a part of Jagged Little Pill? What's made it so special for you now that you can look back and reflect on this?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like that looking back and reflecting, it is we have that shot now. We have to have some time to actually just let the experience sink in.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there are so many reasons why. Part of what I've been thinking about is it was a show that engaged with uh what's happening in our country and what has been happening in our country for a long time now, and engaging with um engaging with like these topics and these fraught things that are sort of pulsing in our country, and to be able to go to work and engage with that in a way that felt meaningful
Yeah.
um was really special. um Of course, I love going to the theater and I love creating theater that is fun and for diversion and to just enjoy a couple of hours in the theater and doesn't necessarily like I'm not somebody who believes that every piece of theater has to be engaging in something that's like a social issue in our country. But I think that for me in this particular time, it was really cathartic to do that and felt purposeful. And so I think
Yeah.
that's something that was really both very special and also very challenging about it. You know, it's a challenging thing to come to work and engage with all of that in a very deep, vulnerable way. So Jagged has also challenged me as a person in a way that I don't think any other show has, but ultimately that's a good thing, even if it's uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. Because you are brilliant as Joe, just so you know. I have seen you numerous times in this show. I saw it first up at ART and then I saw it a few times on Broadway. I think this role of Joe for you is the perfect melding of material and actor. And I think when those kind of things come along, they just make this extra magic. And I was going to ask you, how personal is this role to you, and how do you relate to Joe the most? Because, like I said, it's that perfect melding of role and actor.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. You know, I've never, this is my only experience originating a role so far
Yeah,
on Broadway. Um, and the privilege of the experience of getting to come on board with the very first reading when the role is not really formed yet,
yeah,
when it's kind of an idea. I mean, of course, with Diablo Cody, the idea is brilliant from the
yeah,
get-go, but when it's sort of a thought, it's like a sketch, and you come on board as an actor, and to be able to stay with it throughout the entire process, you become part of who that character becomes is you, because you are in the room developing it and helping to shape it. And that's definitely a privilege that is not something you get to experience all the time as an actor. So I think so much while there's many things about Joe that are not similar to me, I think that her it's hard to describe, but she feels very much like a part of me. You know, I you live with a character for this long, and it becomes sort of a part of your body, and um, I relate so much to um, her care for others, her attunement to. I think that's so much of what you see with the character, and
yeah,
part of what is her strength and also her weakness is her attunement to other people, and being able to show up for others. Unfortunately, before she shows up for herself for the most of the show. And I relate to that so deeply, and just relate to the power of the need to be heard and seen, that comes through for her at the end of the show. But yeah, honestly, it's just when you work on a character this deeply for that many years, it does sort of take up residence inside of you in a way.
yeah. You are working with one of the finest creative teams on this show. Like you said, your book writer, Diablo Cody, your director, Diane Paulus, I mean, Tom
Mm-hmm.
Kitt, City, your choreographer. I mean, just everybody connected with this show. But what was it like getting to meet and work with Alanis Morissette? I mean, was that like pinch me moment when you got to sing for her the first time? Like, what was that like?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, it's the thing about Alanis too is that, like, yes, she is this icon of culture
Yeah,
and of music, and but she's not just like a famous musician and how
yeah,
cool that is. I mean, she's somebody who actively pushed the needle forward for women in music and for representation of women in general and what women think and feel in reality. Um, and so it carries so much to be able to know her, to work with her even in small ways. And she really, I've said this a lot, but
yeah,
she has this presence. You know, she is somebody who she walks into the room and the energy changes. Um, so the first days of her coming into the workshop and seeing our work and getting to perform for her and work with her were very surreal, for sure. Were extremely surreal. And then to just have, the time with her over the years now has been extremely surreal. She's a very beautiful person. Yeah.
Yeah. Then of course there's the songs that she wrote. Of course, you get to do You Ought to Know. You stop the show every single night. I mean, you just bear everything on the stage with that. Is that a surreal moment for you? Because when I watched you do that song like 6 or 7 times on stage, there's this communal thing between what you're putting out there and then the audience giving back to you, and it all becomes one in that theater. And then it's like everybody explodes in this applause and standing ovation for like 3-4 minutes, even longer sometimes. What is that like for you as an actor? I mean, just being able to put that out there and get that back, and just that moment for you singing that song.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head, which is that it's very communal,
Yeah.
and that it doesn't. I think it can sort of, if you think about what that means to get that sort of mid-show standing ovation and how rare it is, right? It can sort of come across as like, you do this thing, and then people are like, wow, you're great, and that's not what the experience, at least for JAGGED, actually feels like. It really feels like the work that everyone is doing on the stage, because the ensemble comes in and is extraordinarily powerful in this number. The work that the energy that we're all putting out on stage, which is truly everything that we have left for that moment. It does sort of shake up the energy in the theater in a way where it releases something, it seems, for the audience. And so it feels very much like a communal experience in which the audience wants to participate in that energy and give that energy back. It's like both the people, all of us on stage and the audience get to both receive and give that monumental energy. And so it feels extremely special in that way. It's not really about applause or praise or whatever, or like, it really is this sort of communal connection with the audience that I've never experienced before in the theater. Yeah.
It's a release.
Yes.
Because what's great about your show is every audience member sees themselves up there in one of you. That's what I think is fascinating about this. Like your character, I mean, being this out strong woman with these feelings. I mean, and then there's you being an out woman. I mean, everybody sees somebody up there finally of them, a representation of themselves on stage in that show. And you get that from the second you walk into the theater. That's what I love about Jagged Little Pill too. You must hear that energy before you all enter the stage, or when you first all come on. There's this like electricity and buzz in the room that you don't always get right away until the show starts, but you all have it there at Jagged.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, it's one of my favorite moments of the show. The way that the show starts is there's a sort of like a projection of like a fizzing video screen, and it goes black and the music starts. And it's before we go on stage, and always the audience screams during that moment of like, the show is starting. And it's such an exciting, welcoming way to run out on stage. I think there is a real energy in the theater that you don't always get.
You have an incredible fan base with this show, because like we were talking about, people see themselves up there. Is there a favorite fan moment or someone's life you've changed? A meeting at the stage door, or someone who wrote you a letter or something during this? Because like you said, there's something incredible about your show that you don't get from many others.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't pick just one. Because we have so many really incredible and very loyal fans. I mean, we've had fans who have followed the show so with so much care and love since we did our out of town tryout at American Rep in Cambridge. I mean, we had people who saw the show several times in Cambridge and then have followed it through to Broadway, and to have people who felt like part of our journey for that long as well is really cool. And but I have in my dressing room, I have taped up on my door all the letters that I've received, and and it's the same. It's in person, but also with letters of a lot a lot of young queer people who have not
Yeah.
felt like they've seen themselves yet in media in a way that really resonated with them. Um, or also just for whatever reason at that time in their life, something I think about Joe's story particularly of struggle with Frankie, struggle with her
Yeah.
mom, struggle with just being seen fully by anybody, even the people who love her. And getting to have a moment where she sort of demands space and demands to be seen, um, I think really resonates for people who also don't feel that they're completely seen in their life at this moment in
Yeah.
time. And so I have, I mean, I have had people who've told me like, because I saw the show, I had the courage to come out to my parents, or
Yeah.
because I saw the show, I recognized my queerness and I hadn't
Yeah.
seen myself in that, you know, all of these
Yeah.
things were, and that's very, um, really powerful, and it means a lot to me. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the people who share those experiences with me. It's kind of, that's why you do it, you know?
Yeah. That's beautiful. You know, I know that every time you do a Diane Paula show, there's presentation day. I've spoken to everybody over the years who've done her shows from everything. And some people are like, I hear your laughter there. Some people are like, oh my gosh, I dreaded presentation day. Or I was like, here was my presentation day. So for our audience out there, when you do a Diane
Mm.
Paula show, there's presentation day when you have to get up in front of the company and sort of present who your character is. So what was your presentation day for Joe in front of the company of Jagged Little Pill?
Oh my God. Yeah, I love, because it's nerve-wracking, right? Because you don't know what anybody else is
Yeah,
gonna do.
yeah,
And it's nerve-wracking. Of
yeah,
course. No, it's funny. We had a pretty amazing presentation day, I think, because here's why I think our presentation day for Jagged was so special, is because our
yeah,
ensemble in the show
yeah,
is incredible. And I think that in this show with this ensemble, Diane wanted the ensemble's individual creative selves
yeah,
in the show, and in how the ensemble is shaped and how the ensemble functions in the show. This was not an ensemble that was like, oh, you know, like a kick line in the back.
yeah,
It was the, you know, which I think is really, really cool and special. And so, while yes, like everybody who has a principal character did their,
yeah,
you know, I did my presentation on Joe, and we had to pick. It was like we had to dance to a song. I remember
yeah,
that we had to like pick a song that we had to dance to at some point in our presentation. We had to, I mean, it was nerve wracking. Okay, I
yeah,
will just say that. But it was what sticks out so
yeah,
much to me was the stories that our ensemble
yeah,
created to show like how they functioned in the show, because our ensemble really, the word that we use to discuss the role of the ensemble in the show is our
yeah,
conscience. It's the conscience of our show. And so what does it mean? What does, you know, each specific person, you know, how were they functioning as the conscience in the
yeah.
show? And so it was like, I mean, it was some of the most incredible pieces that that, you know, it was a very special day, I think, because it showed so much the artistry of every single person in that room. Um, and I think that moving from that place, it really, the conscience of the show, and that,
Yeah.
and it really took shape from there. So it was very cool. It was very cool. But yes, it's funny to hear that it's other shows as well.
Oh, I've
Diane
spoken
Paula
to
staple.
totally. I've spoken to people at Pippin and Porgy and Bess at all these shows, you know, and everyone's like, "Oh, presentation day." They're like, you know, you have to do it tomorrow, and it's like, oh my gosh, but it must
Oh
be
my
just
God.
so opening and freeing. But that's what I love about your ensemble and your show too. Like you said,
Hmm.
the minute you see them, not even
Yeah.
like before they even speak or do something, you know who every single person is up there. And like I said, again, the audience members saying, "Oh, right now, before the show even starts, I relate to that person.
Right.
That's very much like me, just in their demeanor, their swagger," which I thought was really
Hmm.
fascinating how this show was put together. You know,
Yeah.
many people were going to make their Broadway debuts this spring as the pandemic hit. And I hope they all get to do it when Broadway comes back bigger and better than ever. But, you know, Broadway debuts are magical. You got to make yours, of course, in the Janine Tesori and Lisa Crone musical, Fun Home. How magical was that debut for you? Because did you first go on as an understudy for Medium Allison? Was that your first time on?
I did, yes. So,
So tell me,
so
how
yeah,
magical was that? Yeah.
I mean, it's so I was lucky because I had notice of when I was going to make my debut,
Okay.
because it was Emily Skaggs, who played
Yeah.
Medium Allison. I think she had a friend's wedding. I think it was something like, so she had
Yeah.
put in for her personal day. So I was lucky in the sense that it wasn't
You're
hey,
going
guess
on
what,
in
you're
10
making
minutes.
yeah, you're making your debut in 2 hours, surprise.
Yeah.
Because that's of course terrifying.
Uh,
So I had to put in rehearsal. I was
yeah.
prepared. I knew what I woke up that day knowing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was also very nerve-wracking because I had so many people who came. I mean, I didn't even, obviously I told my family, I had family members fly out. I told a couple of friends, and then it like spread. It's not like I didn't do a social media post, hey, come see me on this date.
Yeah.
But I went to NYU for a year, and I was in the Stella Adler studio, and that's where I trained. And I'm not kidding you, every single teacher of mine from Stella Adler was there.
Oh, and you're so close to the audience there too.
I know, and you can see everybody. So it was I mean, it was nerve-wracking. It was also so special because I had you know, my people were there and had my back, because of course it's scary no matter how prepared you are. And you know, so it was the kind of it was very special. It's the kind of debut where, you know, I walked on stage and all of a sudden everybody goes, woo! Like, this isn't an entrance applause situation. But of course everybody, I had my friends and family there who were so excited just to see me make my Broadway debut. So it was really beautiful. I've got, this is my, I think you can see it, my No Nukes poster. I have 2 of them. You can see one up there.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, because this is, for those of you who didn't see Fun Home, it's a prop from the show, but our incredible props masters at Circle and Square saved every single one of those, and I asked if I could keep a couple of them.
Oh.
One is the very last one that I worked on before I left the show, and then the other one is, I think it's the only poster that I worked on because it's from the song Maps. And that one of them is the only one that I worked on with both Roberta Calindres, who played Joan, and Callie Dooling, who was the understudy, and when she was on as Joan with me. And so it's my 2 Joans, the only poster I worked on with both of my Joans.
I know this show, I've had Michael Service, I've had a lot of people who've worked on this show, and they said this was life-changing for them in every single way, not just the role, but the show. And, you know, I had Ian McKellen on as a guest, and I asked Sir Ian, I said to him, you know, I had him and Patrick Stewart on, and I asked them both, I said, was there something that happened during your life that sort of freed you as an actor? And Ian told me, he said, Richard, it's when I came out. He said, everything just opened up. It was like everything had fallen off my back. I felt like I was still hiding a bit, even though I didn't have to, but everything changed for me. And I know that you came out during Fun Home. And I was wondering what was coming out like for you during that? Was it freeing for you? What was it like when you finally said, I'm out? Yeah.
Well, so much of Fun Home for me, I think, you know, my experiences, I didn't see, I was not somebody who understood my queerness. It was not something that, I mean, I can look back now and understand, like, oh, I see this and I see that, and oh, those feelings for women that I didn't you know, understand, all those things. But it's not my experience that I sort of internally knew that I was queer and hid it. I didn't really know what to make of it. I didn't have that language. And I think a lot of that, honestly, is because I hadn't spent time in queer spaces much. And the queer people that I knew were generally cis gay men. which, you know, is great, but it's just not, is not reflective of my queerness. So I didn't see myself in that. So the thing about Fun Home was that it was really the first time that I really spent time and got to know and became really close friends with lesbian women, you know? And there was something about that I throughout the process of the show was really just internally grappling with, like, why do I feel so seen by them? Why do I feel why do I identify so much with them, with how they walk through the world, with the, you know, lesbian culture, with a lot of, it was just sort of, it was the first time that I started to sort of have words for things that I'd already felt. And and so it was shortly after Fun Home that I was able to articulate that. So for me, I think it's so much of, I think it's part of why I relate so much and why it's so powerful for me when young queer people write me and say, "Oh, I saw myself in the show, and thank you for portraying Joe or portraying Minnie Mouse or these people, because I hadn't seen myself before." It's like, because I had that experience, but as the actor, you know, I got to understand that part of myself and actually articulate it because of the work that I was doing. And so I sort of had the same experience, but not by watching it as an audience member, but by, creating the work in the show.
Isn't it great how art can do that to help someone change their life or see something, either as an actor or as an audience member? Fascinating. I think that's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that journey would have looked like for me without Fun Home. I don't know. Who knows when I would have been able to articulate it or not.
Sure. You know, we just finished Pride Month, which of course included Black Lives Matter and so many other things that came together. These important, life-changing things happened this year at Pride. What did Pride mean to you this year? Because also what I love about you is I love how you use your social, Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. You use it to enlighten people, of things that are going out there. But, you have fans all around the world who don't see what we all see in New York City or something, or how important something like this is. And there was a beautiful picture of you at Pride this year with your Allison socks on, right? That you had on
from
Fun Home.
I wore my medium Allison socks, which I kept. Yes.
But I mean, with everything that was going on this year, I mean, this Pride, like, it wasn't a typical Pride, but it took it somewhere else. And I was wondering what it meant to you this year to be a part of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that I want to note too is that, it's interesting with social media, because I appreciate what you said. And usually what I think about it is, I'm certainly no expert on pretty much anything. And so what I share is either just my own experience and also just things that I've just recently learned or am learning. And I think that as a queer person, particularly queer person who lives in New York City, I've always thought about Stonewall riots and really what Pride, how Pride began. And because of course I can walk to be right outside of Stonewall and be there in the history. But there was something different this year in showing up as a white queer person during Pride, because as somebody who, knows some stuff about it, I know that so much of Pride is owed to Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and other trans people of color, right? But the thing about New York, and this is not every Pride March by any means, but the Pride Parade, which was canceled this year because of COVID, is wonderful in many ways, and is also like very corporatized, and that is how there's floats with various businesses on the side, and it's city sponsored and super organized and all of these things, and that's wonderful, and it's great to celebrate. And also, it's not what Pride, how Pride started. It's it's not what Pride was a protest against police
Yeah.
brutality and discrimination, and a series of riots over a course of many nights. So I think that I had not experienced a Pride that felt
Yeah.
actually connected to that. And to have it was interesting too because of course we got the news I think in early June that
Yeah.
New York City was canceling the Pride Parade, and I had a couple of people ask me, oh, well, how are you going to celebrate Pride? Are you going to do something virtual? What are you going to do? And to me, it just felt very clear. Want to be clear, safely with masks and
Yeah. Oh
PPE and all
yeah.
the things, but like it felt very clear that I would be on the streets near Stonewall during Pride. Like there was just no. Of course, there were some virtual events that I did.
Yeah.
The Playbill Pride Spectacular, I
Yeah.
watched that. I mean, I got to take part of that. It was amazing. But to me, if I live in New York City, I'm this close to Stonewall. I'm not going to not, just because there's not a Pride parade, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be in those streets, and that came to fruition, I feel like, with the need to center Black queer and Black trans experience this month.
Yeah.
And the number of Black trans women that I heard speak at protests and at rallies this month, um, the anything that had to do with Pride this month was very consciously centering Black queer and trans experience, and it was incredible. It was
Yeah.
incredible. And I just had never, in my own limited Pride experiences, I'd never experienced something that actually was that consciously and vocally tied to the history of Pride, really.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the photos on your Instagram and everything else are really powerful. They're just, you can see the feeling in you and everybody else around you. And I know some of your Jagged cast was there. I mean, it was just, I'm sure it was just a whole different Pride this year, but I know it meant the world to so many people to celebrate this year. And like I said, I just love it to use your social media to enlighten people, because I've looked at your stuff and said, oh, let me go click on this. Let me go click and read about this. And I'm like, I should know all this stuff, and I don't. So I want to thank you for all of that.
Thank
Growing
you.
up, where did your love for theater begin? And was there a defining moment for you when you said, I want to be an actor and try to make a living at this?
Yes. Also,
Yeah.
I have no memories of not
Yeah.
wanting to act, wanting to sing,
Yeah.
and that being a part of my life. I mean, I'm extraordinarily lucky
Yeah.
and privileged in that my parents were very supportive from the beginning of me uh, being part of community theater and then working professionally.
Yeah.
And I had a mom who was able to travel with me and come to Los Angeles with me so I could do a show
Yeah.
there and come to New York. I mean, I would not be where I am today without my parents' support. And yeah, so I started doing community theater when I was a child because my parents said, "Okay, sure, well, why
Yeah.
don't you?" I had a great community theater in the suburb next to us,
Yeah.
and so I just loved it from the beginning. But I think that the moment where it sort of clicked for me
Yeah.
of why I wanted to make this my life's work, right? Not just like, oh, this is fun to
Yeah.
do, but I did a production of The Diary of Anne Frank
Yeah.
when I was 14. And it was at an incredible theater company outside of Los Angeles called Rubicon Theater Company, which sort of became my artistic home as a
Yeah.
teenager. But that was the first show I did as a teenager who was old enough to sort of absorb the actual
Yeah.
meaning of it. That really, the theater did so much community outreach around the production, and so it was doing a lot of talkbacks with students, and also a lot of community outreach with the Jewish community
Yeah.
in that area, and just recognizing the importance of storytelling for people being seen, as we've been talking about, people being seen,
Yeah.
people feeling represented and heard. And there was just something that clicked with me in that of like, oh, here is the larger importance of what I can actually do with this. It's not just I like to sing. This is I
Yeah.
like to act. This is fun to be on stage. Um, so that I feel like is when my trajectory shifted to actually what my priorities are as an actor now and why it's important to me to keep doing this.
See, what I love about you also is you were always interested in plays, musicals. You never thought you had that traditional musical theater voice. So you sort of
No.
shied away from that. But I love that you've taken the voice you have and run with it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I really,
Yeah.
there was a point in time where I was like, I'm done trying to be in musicals because
Yeah.
I mean, I still, I mean, it's gotten a lot better in the last few years, but I used to have so much anxiety singing. Um, I was fine if I was in a show, but
Yeah.
any kind of concert situation, like an audition, oh my God, I was so, I mean, literally the point where I was just like
Yeah.
in the room shaking like this. Um, and I just remember
Yeah.
after one audition being like, I don't like feeling that way. I don't
Yeah.
like being that anxious. And I think I have always considered myself an actor first, right?
Yeah.
That's how I approach things. Um, so for me, I would be happy just doing plays as long
Yeah.
as I'm telling stories. That's all I want to be doing. And but of course, it was after I had that thought of like,
Yeah.
I'm done with this. I'm not going to do plays anymore. Is of
Yeah.
course when that I mean, I'm not going to do musicals anymore. Is of course when I was getting hired to do musicals all the
Yeah.
time after
All of a
that.
sudden, Fun
But yeah, I
Home
found my
comes
place in
along
it.
or something. Yeah, totally. No, but I just love that you made, everybody says, oh, I wish I sounded like so and so. No, be yourself. Everyone should be themselves. That's what the director's gonna hire them for being themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think it was
Yeah.
important for me to recognize like I'm not going to be able to sing
Yeah.
everything and that's not a fault. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to sing like Kelly O'Hara.
Yeah.
That's not how my voice is. But I think that as a teenager and as a young adult, I
Yeah.
had this notion that it was like bad if I couldn't sing
Yeah.
everything. But of course that's not
And now
how a
look
vocal
at you.
instrument works.
And now look at
Yeah.
you. You stopped the show with, in Jagged Little Pill. Were you good at
Yeah.
auditioning? Because we have a lot of actors watching this from all around the world,
Mm.
and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I know I can do a role, but I
Mm.
hate or I'm just freaked at auditions." Were you good at auditions, or what is your secret to auditioning?
I feel like sometimes I am and
Yeah.
sometimes I'm not still.
Okay.
It depends on I feel like so much of auditioning is a mental game.
Yeah.
It depends on how comfortable I feel with the
Yeah.
material. What particularly with musicals, if I feel comfortable singing the stuff or if it's a little out of my range or it feels a little I
Yeah.
mean it's so much of a mental game. But I think I have had auditions, many auditions now, in which for me, I'm always the most comfortable when I get to work in the room, when you have a
Yeah.
director who wants to, because then it feels like rehearsal.
Yeah.
And then it's just fun. Um, it's those calls where you sort of go in and you sing your 32 bars and they go, thank you, and then you
Yeah.
leave where it's like it's so hard. So sometimes I'm good and then sometimes I'm not. I'm not
Yeah.
a perfect auditioner by any means.
So you just do what you do, leave the room, and hope that it all worked out or something.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
think so much I've just like I've had to learn to just let it
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
just really not be then holding on to like, well,
Yeah.
have I gotten feedback? Have you heard anything
Yeah.
from them? Am I gonna, you just go in and you do your
Yeah.
job. And also, I mean, and I don't always, I'm
Yeah.
not always able to think this way, but if I can just see that an audition is just a chance for me to work a little bit that day rather than
Yeah.
like trying to get a job and if maybe if
Yeah.
they like me or whatever, but it's like it's actually just a chance I get to sing today or I get to do a great scene and I get to work and it's a chance to work. That's
Yeah.
always when I feel better about it. But yeah, I think I mean
Yeah.
and there's sometimes you'll go in for, I think now that I know myself better
Yeah.
as well, it's easier when I know what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are. I mean, one of my favorite audition stories now is because I was
Yeah.
just like, this is fun. I auditioned for Frozen for Elsa, and
Oh.
but I knew I wasn't gonna get Elsa. That's not my wheelhouse. And so I went in, I sang it. They gave me an adjustment. I sang it again. And then they said, thanks so much for coming in. I went, thanks for having me. And basically walked out and went, they're going to find a great Elsa. I can't wait to see who they find. But I went, I'm going to sing Let It Go today.
Yeah.
It's going to be really fun. I'm almost certain I'm not gonna get this part, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. So I try to have more of that attitude too.
Oh, I love it. You entered the world of Disney. You entered the world of Frozen. I love it. But most
Yeah,
actors who I spoke to said the way they look at it is just what you do. Today I get to act. Today I get to sing. Today I
yeah,
get to stand in front of someone and show people what I do.
yeah.
But I love that you
Because
went into Frozen saying, I love that, saying, I'm
here's
not going
my
to get this.
here's how I do, Elsa. I really doubt it's what you're gonna hire, but
Oh, I want to see you do Elsa. You have to do a benefit or part of a benefit night. Roles I wanted to do or whatever. I should start some other thing here. Roles I wanted to do. Oh, talking about
yes,
uh, dream roles for you. A dream show of yours has always been Les Mis, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, I think I well, Les Mis was my
Yeah.
absolute obsession when I was a
Yeah.
kid. I mean, of course, when I was a teenager, it's like Rent,
Yeah, of
Avenue
course.
Q,
Yeah.
all Spring Awakening. But I know it sounds weird, but seriously, like as an 8 and 9 year old, I was like obsessed with Les Mis. I went to see it so many
Yeah.
times. To the point I was so young that I was scared at the gunshots, but I
Yeah.
knew the show well enough to know when Gavroche died to
Yeah.
hold my ears. Like
Yeah.
that's how young I was. I was obsessed with the show. So there's not really a role in Les Mis that I wouldn't like to play.
But I hear that Javert is a role you'd like to do, right?
Yeah, I think I would love to do a gender bent Javert. Yeah,
Oh,
I would love that. I think Stars is one of the most beautiful songs ever written in the world.
well, it is
It's
now
just
out there at Broadway World. I think that's a brilliant idea. When I read that, I was like, she wants to do Javert. I'm like, she'd be fabulous as
I'm just
Javert.
saying. I'm
Yeah,
just
okay.
saying.
Well, it's out there now. I have to get into your TV work. You're on one of my favorite TV shows, Blue Bloods. I mean, you played Officer Rachel Whitten. I mean, just brilliant. But of course, you were written off the show. And then Tom Selleck is one of your biggest fans, right?
I know it was. I
Yeah.
mean, Tom is a very
Yeah.
kind, thoughtful man, and yeah, I was really. It was my first guest star on television. I'd done
Wow.
small roles before, but it was my first kind of like big episode role, and um, I was just meant to be on one episode. My character
Yeah.
was fired at the end of the episode. That's how it was written. So I just thought it was like a one-off, and I went in, and it was great, and I had a wonderful time, and yeah, and then they called me back the next season, and basically Tom had wanted my character to be rehired and back on the
Yeah.
show.
Oh,
So
I
we
have
had an episode
goosebumps.
in which I know, which he hired me back on the fourth. Yeah, so what was going to be one episode turned into, I think, maybe like 8 or 9 now,
Yeah.
and funny enough, with the shutdown as well, so we
Yeah.
shut down Broadway on a Thursday. I was on set at Blue Bloods on Friday,
Yeah.
starting to film another episode, and by the end of the day, the Blue Bloods set had also been shut down. So it was the same thing with television. It was all very sudden too. Um, so
Did
yeah,
you finish
but
the episode? Did you finish that episode on
no,
Friday or no?
no, because I was going to finish it on
Wow.
Monday, I think.
Yeah.
So that episode didn't air. And then there was going to be, because I believe they had had 3 episodes left in their
Yeah.
season prior to shutting down, and I was going to be in the following one as well. So yeah, it was. But they are renewed for another season. So whenever
Oh,
TV production can start back up, I know they'll start back up too, and I hope I'll be part of it. But it's been, yeah, it's been so wonderful to get to experience what it's like to be on a set more regularly and be kind of part of the family. And so many people from Blue Bloods came to see
oh,
Jagged too,
oh.
which was so good and so kind. Because my main person who I work with now is Vanessa Ray, who is also
Yeah.
a Broadway person, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so she came to see the show and a bunch of other people, which was so lovely. But yeah, it's been really wonderful to be part of that family too.
It must be so incredible, but to have someone like Tom Selleck said, no, this never should have happened this way. We have to bring her back. This is something you
I
dream
couldn't
of.
believe it. I know, I couldn't believe it. And also it was a big
Yeah.
deal for my family and for my
Oh,
house as well, because my grandmother, her favorite show in the world was Blue Bloods. And so
yeah.
it was a huge deal when I got to call her and tell her that I was going to be on an episode of Blue Bloods with Tom Selleck, that I was doing my scenes with Tom Selleck. And then it was an even bigger deal when I got to call her back and say, okay, he wants me to still be on the show. I'm going to have another episode with him. I mean, it was incredible.
Oh my gosh. Then you got to do The Good Fight, Polly Dean.
Yes.
Fun doing that too? Is it?
Oh, yeah. So great. And also because, I mean, that show is really full of theater people as well.
Yeah.
So I was always working with Kate Shindle, who is an awesome actress and is our equity president.
Yep.
She's amazing. But then working with Christine Baranski and Audra McDonald, which was like crazy. So crazy. They're both so wonderful.
So all my friends that worked Law and Order said you used to be invited to Jerry Orbach's trailer and used to watch old Tony Award clips, like in between stuff. So I was wondering with all these, all these people who worked Law and Order were like, oh my God, I got the invite to go, to sit in Jerry Orbach's trailer and watch all those great Alexander Cohen years. Like, here we are at the Tonys, 42nd Street, Evita,
oh my God, that's so
Babies,
cool.
Liza in the Act, all this, Katharine Hepburn, Coco, all this incredible stuff. So it's funny, it must be really cool to be on these sets on TV with all these theater people.
It's very cool. Yeah, I mean, that's next level. I wish that I had been here during the era of Jerry Orbach Law and Order. No, but I think here's the thing too about working with theater people on television too, is that it's like Christine Baranski, particularly, she's the number one on that show. You know, she works her ass off for that show. I would like the hours that she works are crazy, and she does it all as a extremely generous, loving leader of the show. And the thing that really struck me is like, when you're in theater, you have to do the work. There is no, you work long hours, you work hard, and you're all, even when you are somebody like Christine, who's a huge star. I mean, you are still part of the family who is putting in, their blood, sweat, and tears into the show. And so getting to work on television with someone like Christine and like Audra as well. I mean, there was no, when we were waiting in between takes, we all sat in the same room and just hung out. There wasn't any like status stuff or anything.
Theater people.
It was just theater people. And as a theater person, and this is part of why I love working on television sets in New York too, is because people really respect theater. And they respect theater people. And so you walk onto that set as a theater person and you're on a level playing field, So getting to work with Christine and Audra in that capacity was, I mean, so amazing. And also just to prove what incredible women they both are as well.
That's terrific. Well, I cannot wait. We're almost out of time. I cannot wait. When your band comes back, I am so there, just so you know. I have been watching so many clips of rehearsal clips and these videos you've all made with your band. Your band is the coolest. They're all at different ages and everything else. So
thank you. I know. We're just four people who frequently work on Broadway, but just who love rock music. And we just said, let's just play the music that we love.
Well, I love it. Well, I'm going to be one of your biggest fans when you come back and you do a concert. My final question for you is, so much is happening during this pandemic. People finally rising up for change. I mean, so many incredible things. What have you learned the most during this time? And what do you hope people can do to help change things? What are happening right now?
Yeah, I think that the fact that we're all really forced to pause is so important for actually looking at what needs to be changed, because it is very easy, and I say this from the perspective of it's very easy for me when I'm doing an 8-show week, got a lot of other stuff on my plate, I'm trying to still be in touch with my family, see my friends, show up in my life, show up for my work, all these things. It's very easy to be okay with sort of just how things are, status quo. And I think that in this time to really, I think that part of, and this is not a novel thought, it's what a lot of people are saying, that part of why the resurgence of the energy behind the Black Lives Matter movement was so powerful right now is because white people could not ignore it and could not ignore the blatant violence of
Yeah.
the deaths of Breonna Taylor and of Tony McDade and of George Floyd and unfortunately so many others. I mean, there was no, wow, that's really horrific. Got to get to work. You know,
Yeah.
like there was no more of that. And so I think that um, while of course we're not going to be in this pause forever, I think what I hope, what I've been trying to use this time to um, educate myself and to
Yeah.
take part in different um, anti-racist groups and just like trying to learn, trying to keep open my mind and my heart to really
Yeah.
actually learning about this and in a new way. And I think what my goal is for myself and what I hope we can carry through is like it's a long game. This isn't just oh, I participated in this for a couple of months, but now
Oh
my
yeah.
job is back. So, you know, so that's what I think where my head is at is how to both do the work now while I have a lot of time,
Yeah.
but also remember this feeling, remember this internal shift that I've had, and I think so many of us have had, and actually carry that through for the many years to come, rather than sort of like, well, that was a little break.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's where my head is at. Yeah.
Beautiful. This has been great. Like I said, I was there not for the first time you went on stage in Fun Home, but I was there when you took over, when Emily had left to do a project. And I was there. So, I mean, I've watched your career grow in all the things you've done. And I just thank you for being the kind of person that you are and what you put out there and what you use your social platforms for to keep everything moving. And just, it's a dream to listen to you talk and just to watch you make art on stage. Just so you know, Lauren, I've been a
Thank
huge
you. I
fan of
feel the
yours.
same way about you. You've been
Yeah.
there from the beginnings of my career here in New York, and I'm so grateful for you.
Well, this has been great. Everybody, we'll see you soon. Everybody, stay safe. Lauren,
Yes.
have a great, you know, until we're back again. Broadway will be back bigger and better than ever. And I'll be there when you all start back at Jagged Little Pill and everything else. Take care, my love. Good to see you as always.
Great to see you.